Greetings and salutations, friends and fans alike. Welcome back into my channel. It is a pleasure to be hosting another astrology chit-chat today, and one that is going to be touching on a topic that every astrologer has had on their clipboard this year. And just in case you're new here and we haven't been formally introduced, hey there, I'm Howie, and I'm one of those astrologers. I am a professional reader of tarot cards and astrology by trade. I'm a chronic non-reader of horror fiction in my spare time, and I'm a huge planning enthusiast. Because let's face it, something around here needs to help me keep all of these crazy trains of thoughts running on the tracks. And it does help to have an analog system in place so that I can track these astrological transits to make these videos for your consumption. Now, the subject of today's video is the great benefic Jupiter, our planet of good fortune, abundance, prosperity, religion and spirituality, and the expansion of our consciousness beyond the material realm. And the reason we're talking about Jupiter today is, as of June 30th, he has ingressed out of his exaltation in Cancer and into the temple of the Sun, the sign of Leo. Now, Jupiter is not particularly dignified or undignified in Leo. This is a rather neutral space for him. But because Jupiter moves at such a slow pace, he is going to be spending almost a full year visiting the Temple of the Sun. And therefore, it is worth it to take some time today to break down his topics, Leo's topics, and put them together to build a cohesive story that could reflect within our own personal lives over the course of the year. So go ahead and grab your planners, your diaries, your journals, your favorite pens, your favorite stickers, anything at all that you need to take notes in today's video. And let's go ahead and reflect upon the stars together, shall we? Per the usual for any of these astrology chit-chats, it's important to take a look at our moving parts within this greater equation. And there is no better place to start than with our greater benefic, the planet Jupiter. And besides the topics of abundance and prosperity, Jupiter also represents nobility. And this is going to be a very important keyword to keep in mind for this particular transit, because Leo, as the temple of the Sun, can also represent nobility. So we got a double up of keywords here, and we're going to see how this plays out when I get to the delineations towards the end of the video. For now, just make a note of that. Moving on through the list of Jupiter's topics, we also see governance and ordinance in Jupiter, but where morality and ethics are concerned. Jupiter exercises an orderliness to chaos and discord through temperance and through moderation. So you can often see judges, lawmakers, and lawyers with certain specific Jupiterian placements. On top of that, Jupiter can also beget spiritual leaders, priests, bishops, because Jupiter represents this idea of expansion of consciousness, expansion beyond materiality. So he represents topics that have to do with organized religion and spirituality. As the greater benefic, this life-giving planet, we also see topics like unity, that comes from Cancer of bringing something into materiality, but also charity and generosity, the idea of abundance to the point where we are able to share it with others. We have this excess of gifts. Now, on the shadow side of that abundance, you can also experience the concept of exaggeration. And there's a certain aspect he's going to be making with a certain planet that's going to take that keyword and highlight that as well, but that is for a later discussion. For now, just take the basic notes. Lastly, as a life-giving planet, as a benefic, we also have serenity, sweetness, and pleasantries associated with Jupiter. Jupiter also seeks pleasurable activities and pleasurable feelings, whereas Venus, the lesser benefic, is more about the tangibility and physicality of those sensations, these sensory experiences. Jupiter seeks a more holistic and spiritual state of well-being. And as physical spaces, Jupiter can symbolize and represent public conventions, oratories, courts, and of course, churches, or religious sanctuaries. Now we're going to move on and focus on our sign, our temple of the sun, which is the fiery fixed sign of Leo. Now remember what I said earlier, where Leo also represents the concept of nobility. And that is because Leo is ruled by the sun, the central figure in the language of astrology. The sun himself can symbolize kings, leaders, governors, individuals who direct a community, a group, and someone who other people look up to for guidance. Because we're talking about kings and kingship here, Leo also symbolizes fame, notoriety, reputation, and most importantly, legacy. The legacies that we inherit and the legacies that we leave behind for others. Now, on the topic of legacy, this also means that Leo transcends the constraints of the material realm. Because what is a legacy but your imprint, your intangible imprint into history that transcends the limitations of your physical lifetime? In a way, Leo can represent the idea of symbolism and of an individual ascending and becoming a symbol in and of themselves. So within Leo, we find eternity and eternal concepts, and also spirit, source, because we're talking about its ruler, the sun. Going back to the topic of leadership, both on the bright side and the shadow side, we really focus on the concept of authority and authoritative figures in Leo. Now, with that brings the idea of loyalty, but also, as a shadow side, tyranny, of overpowering a community or a group of people. Because we have the sun here, there could be an overexaggeration of the ego. The sun as a symbol can represent the ego. So we find that same concept here in Leo. And lastly, because this is a fixed sign, where the sun is in a fixed state of visibility but descension down to the horizon, because as I mentioned in a previous video, Cancer and the summer solstice is the very peak of the sun's visibility, the longest day of the year. And now in Leo season, he is in a fixed state of descending back down to earth, of bringing something into materiality, something that persists, that transcends the lifetime. So there's also this idea of stability, of gnosis. Again, the fixed signs bring a form of stability and consistency, and especially in the sign of Leo, with the sun, who represents consistency, because his cycle, his traversing of the sky, is so easily predictable. And now that we've got our notes on our two moving parts, we can start playing our little game of Mad Libs and crafting our delineations, our more concise storylines that we may see unfold over the course of the upcoming year. Now, I will be doing more specific horoscopes in a later video, especially because I want to emphasize for all of my fixed rising signs out there how much this Jupiterian transit might impact you more, because you're going to be experiencing Jupiter and Leo in one of your 4 angular houses, those louder spaces of the birth chart. So for now, I'm going to try and keep it as general as possible as we run through the possibilities that Jupiter may offer in his humble transit through Leo. Of course, first and foremost, a good starting point when we consider Jupiter in Leo is religious and spiritual iconography or fame. As a slower moving planet who is going to be taking his time in this sign, I can see how Jupiter may bring a lot of attention and a lot of focus to the iconography of certain religious or spiritual movements over the next year. And just because he's the greater benefic does not mean that he brings with him fortuitous events or good luck. Jupiter as a shadow can bring some very difficult and challenging lessons to learn with him. And so just because you are well known and highlighted in the public eye does not mean this is for all good reasons. So with this transit, we may see fame, but also infamy as well. Definitely keep that in mind as the rest of the year starts to unfold. Continuing along the thread of organized religion and spiritual expansion or exploration, we could experience the idea of blind faith or blinding faith. Jupiter is navigating the sun's temple, and the sun is this bright, bold central figure in astrology. What comes to mind is the idea of knowing too much. The sun's gnosis, his intellect, can be overwhelming, and that may drive some folks to put too much weight into faith and hope over fact, or even vice versa. So that dichotomy of trying to find a balance between faith and fact could be a struggle we see unfold over the course of the next year. And of course, on the topic of fame or infamy, because we're dealing with Jupiter here, Jupiter is going to give some folks a really big, really high, and really loud platform to speak from. And so there's the risk of exaggerating your reputation, exaggerating the fame or infamy that you may be garnering over this next year. And this could be an exaggeration of truths or an exaggeration of misinformation or disinformation. Now let's move on to the legal matters, the morality that Jupiter brings to this equation. What I'm thinking here is the idea of legacy or outdated laws, rules, and regulations being called into question and being scrutinized for some form of improvement or amendment. And I say this especially when Jupiter stations retrograde, which he inevitably will. Jupiter will be retrograde for approximately 5 months anytime he transits a sign. And when we have retrograde, there's that idea of review, revision, revisiting something. So revising outdated laws and regulations could be a concept we see here because we're getting a double dose of Jupiter's law and order, but also the sun's influence in Leo of authority and authoritative figures. Now, the shadow side of Jupiter and his legalities navigating the sign of the ego is thinking you're above the law, thinking you are superior to the rules and regulations you have put forth for those you feel are below you or beneath you. This is a dangerous case of the ego transcending the law and ethics. So that's something we may want to keep an eye on and be very wary of. Now, on the flip side, and even bright side for those tyrannical authoritative figures, those egoistic leaders, Jupiter, as that hard lesson I was talking about earlier, could bring forth justice and retribution where tyranny is involved. And there's an aspect in particular that Jupiter is going to be making, that I will talk about in another video, where tyranny is probably going to be heavily challenged. And because we're in this very public space of Leo, we're all going to hear about it. Now, lastly, an important topic that Jupiter can symbolize and represent, I had briefly mentioned it, this concept of unity, is coherence. Law and order isn't just legal matters and ethics and morality. It is bringing form to something that is discordant and chaotic and nonsensical. So it is bringing coherence, in the case of Leo, to our self-identity and also to our personal beliefs, not just the spiritual and religious ones. We could see some folks going through some very difficult but expansive and freeing identity crises over the next year, especially for folks whose first house, their rising sign, is either ruled by Jupiter or the sun, or who have the sun natally in their first house. That goes back to the link between the sun ruling the sign of Leo. Anything that happens in Leo, the sun is going to feel or reflect or receive influence from. And there you have it, folks. This has been a very brief introduction, a little bit of Jupiter in Leo one-on-one, if you will, to get us started for this year-long transit that Jupiter will be making in all of our birth charts. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I hope you were able to glean some insight and wisdom for the time being, just until I can get down to the nitty-gritty horoscopes and really dive in deeper into this transit overall. Until the next time we meet, I want to thank you all so much for the support that you bring to the channel. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you want to continue supporting the channel so that I can continue making content for your consumption like this, then by all means go ahead and like, share, and if you so choose, subscribe for more content that's all about tarot and astrology and spirituality and esotericism and journaling and yes, even horror book reviews. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in the next video, and by all means, if there's a specific astrological topic you want me to talk about, leave a comment down below with your suggestions. I would love to get some feedback from my community that I'm building here on YouTube. For now though, I hope you have a fantastic day, an even more fantastic week, and don't forget to please take care of yourselves and each other, especially in times like these. Bye-bye!